So I think, as almost everybody has heard or read of thus far, we have a phenomenon called generative AI that's popping up in virtually all media, journalistic media, with all kinds of claims, all kinds of complaints, but more than anything, a sense of wonder at what this could possibly mean for us in our world. Basically, generative AI, if you weren't familiar with it, and we're going to avoid technical discussions here today, generative AI is essentially working with images, text, audio, to produce images, text, and audio. And so, small example, if you wanted to, as I did several months ago, want to see if you can create a painting with one of these advanced algorithmic AI solutions, a painting of maybe a ship crashing on the rocks, dark, stormy night, just type in the keywords, it's generated, and you've got your painting. Typically, it's full of errors. So you go through an iterative process by which you try to retrain the chat function so that you can get to something that's more acceptable to you. All of that capability can be applied out across many artistic forms and many practical solutions as well for businesses, schools, and whatnot. If for some reason you wanted to see what Beethoven might sound like, if guitars, the modern guitars, were added, you're just a few clicks away from being able to experience what that might indeed sound like. So how is this all done? Very briefly, and again, avoiding technical discussion, it essentially is taking some established machine learning capabilities. This is one of the flavors, if you will, of AI, one of the capabilities, and applying it against a very large language model, such that tremendous computing power, tremendous storage is needed, something that your small AI startups cannot really handle just yet. In fact, it's even said that OpenAI, the firm that innovated the Chat GPT solution, really, just to get the first version out, needed over 45 terabytes of data. Where is all that data coming from? Well, naturally, it's the web, the internet. And we are generating, as humanity is generating, just tremendous amounts of content every day. So really, to solve this problem and get our AI generative solutions actually being relevant requires tremendous computing power. And the good news is that that's been figured out by and large, and we're well down the road. Generative AI is not without its risks. As some of you who have played with it, perhaps, you've discovered that factually it can be quite wrong, despite a tone of voice, so to speak, in its production for you that seems to imply certainty. But in fact, lots of errors can happen. Small example, the ship painting I referenced a little earlier had two masts crossing each other, something that makes no sense to anybody who's ever been on a sailboat. Other risks include the possibility that you have using someone's name or using perhaps a targeted governmental official. You could create content that could, per your nation's laws, possibly be libelous, where you are sued for defamation. There's lots of new risks to be discovered. The laws and regulations will obviously be applied, probably slowly, not quickly, in most of our nation states. So we'll have to be very mindful that the power of generative AI can also put us in a spot of trouble right away. All of this points to, in my opinion, and I think others share it, that every organization, schools, churches, companies, nonprofit organizations like the Asia Society, will all need to establish AI governance, which is a very unique and special challenge, a little bit different than normal corporate governance, and certainly different from IT governance, for those of you who know a little bit about that world. So today, we've got an outstanding panel. The three panelists that you will be speaking with and meeting very shortly are not just thought leaders in their area of the arts, but they're also artists themselves. We've got Dr. Johnny Poon, who leads the music department at the remarkable Hong Kong Baptist University, here with us. We're going to play a video about him very shortly. We've also got Dr. Lisa SoYoung Park, who is a remarkable artist and very explorative and curious, I guess I'll say, as to where art, culture, and technology all meet. She's got some outstanding content she'll be sharing with us. And then we welcome back Mr. Stanley Qiufan Chen, sorry, Stan, who brings some of the most outstanding AI and sort of future-facing novels and literature that I've ever really come across. And indeed, his book 2041, which he wrote with the eminent Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, just remains simply one of the best AI books out on the market. Explain to us how AI can augment a musical artist. How might that work, and what problems might someone encounter along the way?
Hi, Bruce. Thank you for the question. Glad to be here. Yes, on your question about generative AI and how it can enhance music performance, let me give you an example. We did in a live concert, the suite from Daphne and Chloe. And in that particular performance, it requires a backstage choir, human choir. And then obviously there was originally a ballet music. So it involves sceneries, and also dancer, ballet dancer. So in a situation where Hong Kong back then was still in some sort of pandemic mode, where having a live choir removing their mask, singing in the live concert was still a bit of a challenge. The stage, trying to get dancer, in a very crowded stage, with this kind of social distancing was still a bit of a concern. So my research team decided, how about let's use AI technology to help us enhance this performance by allowing a AI choir to sing in place of a live choir, by creating AI choreographer and dancer to dance to the music, live music performed by an orchestra, and then creating an AI artist to create the scenery based on the music, the rhythm, and the scenery, creating a highly interactive experience for the audience according to the music, ebbs and flow of the music. So our team actually was able to create our own algorithm and machine learning to allow a human sounding choir singing in real time with a live orchestra, and then with the constantly changing visual as the backdrop, as the scenery, and then with dancer dancing with creatures, sea creatures, in a totally made-up world, which is a fantasy. That was exactly what Ravel had in mind for the ballet, of this love story about Daphne and Chloe. So I think I hope you will get a chance to see that clips. But that was what we did, using generative AI technology to enhance live performance performed mostly by human beings.
Fantastic summary. Yeah, it sounds like there was some serious assistance in pulling this off. So here's a case where, just for our audience to appreciate, where AI powerfully contributed to a concert, but wasn't driving or owning the concert, so to speak. This is Johnny and his team leveraging some of the AI solutions to enhance and do it a little differently, which is outstanding. Johnny, anything you want to just briefly share to help the audience better process what it is they just saw?
You see some of the elements of the performance, between human and AI, collaborative performance. We have a human choir, AI choir singing, the chorus part. But you saw the process of how we create using a single human seed to, and then using data to teach the machine to sound like that was actually a combined data of some of the very famous singers, Domingo Corrales, Maria Callas, singing in the choir, along with many different voice sample we got. So that's another issue about copyright or intellectual property, but that's something else we might want to discuss later. But the thing is, that was a choir, and the first time when I heard that, I was quite shocked because we were looking at each other say, did you teach the machine to sing like that? I mean, all the musical phrases, the sound of the breath, and it sounds so artistic. So we were astounded by how machine managed to learn, pick up human traits. And so it was almost like holding up a mirror and looking at ourselves. Do we sound like that? So that was revealing for us. This is how we human beings sometimes use AI to remind ourselves and kind of take a peek into our secret of creativity. Sometimes we don't even know. We can't quite put our finger to it. So that was a very useful process. The same way you saw how I was wearing a mocap suit, so I can communicate with AI, in the live performance, and then we rehearse. I tell you, in the first rehearsal, it was just completely a disaster because the mocap required me to do exactly what I did the first time. So if I don't do anything a little bit slightly deviate from the original capture, then it will not respond. So then I remember I turned to the scientist. I say, no, I won't have any of that because you are turning me into a robot. So then we came up with a new algorithm that will allow that kind of noise that I produce. If I'm just a little bit off the center, it should be able to recognize. So that was a very interesting process of learning for us. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Lisa and Stan, perhaps you could unmute and turn on video as well. Please, Stan, we'll go to you. In the world of literature, one of the other areas we will look at in today's session, be that short story writing, journalism, whatever it might be, how would you see AI augmenting a writer and or editorialist?
Right. Thanks, Bruce, for having me here, and very happy to back on the stage of Asia Society. So I started to do the writing experiment, collaborating with machine, with AI since 2017. So that was the year when Google launched Transformer. So basically it's like the ChatGPT and everything based on back in the day. But back then we don't have the technology yet, so we're just using very preliminary technologies such as CNN, convolutional neural network, and LSTM, long short-term memory model. So I fed it with all of my writing materials. So we create this model can generate something like looks highly abstract, the style of my own writing. So I'm using this model to co-author some of the short stories with me. And interestingly, so it even won me a prize because later on I wrote a book. It's called The Algorithm for Life. So it's a collection including 6 stories of human AI evolution in the future. So one of the story I'm using this technology, like embedded all this paragraph in the story. And 2019, so there's a award, it's a very official award using AI as a jury. So of course it's different language, written different algorithm. So it's giving a score to like over 1,000 something stories written by very established Chinese author in the previous year, 2018. So ultimately, they found that my piece, written with AI, got the highest score, but outbid the one written by Mr. Mo Yan, the Nobel Prize winner of literature. So I become the winner of the AI Literature Award with the piece I co-author with AI. So this is something totally surreal to me because I never think of things like this will really happen. But it seems to me like this is the tipping point of like even the history of creative writing, because right now AI is gonna be doing something like out of our expectation and imagination, because right now the ChatGPT thing, it can do something more than we expected, because it's like generated, because the large language model can emergent some function, some features we never think of before. And right now I actually proactively embedded this tool into my writing process. So it helped me to uplifting my productivity, and also help me to rapid brainstorming all these ideas. And sometimes it's easy to collecting all this information from internet, and it's good to use it to write some descriptive scenario. For example, if I want to write something about a totally strange environment of another planet or another city. So it can help me to do that. So, and it's so fast and so quick, but always that it's based on human judgment. I have to use my sense and sensibility to decide which part is useful, and I have to rewrite it and to make it feel more in my style of writing. So I think in the future, like near future, AI will be a very useful and powerful tool for helping people who doesn't have enough skill, for example, writing or painting, illustrating. They can become some artists, can produce and create some very high quality works. And this is actually uplifting the whole average level of content industry. So I think this is happening not only in literature, music, arts, but also will be changing the film, game, and maybe performance art industry in the near future. So this is what I'm being experiencing and seeing. So I'm very excited about it. Yep.
Well, excited too. I think we all are for your successes, and congratulations on that award as well. Just today, in one of our distinguished newspapers here in the United States, there was an author who talked about how special it was to be able to read bedtime stories to his daughter when he got home, typically a little late from work. And so he went on to say that his daughter, unfortunately, needed a news story every night. So with ChatGPT, he would throw in a few variables, electric sheep or some crazy imaginative variable, and ask for, say, a 3-page or a 5-page equivalent story to be generated. And of course, it is generated within seconds, literally seconds. And then he might throw an iteration or two to help clean up the story a little bit, and he'd be done. That would only take a couple more iterative minutes, and voila, he's got his story to read his daughter at night. Lisa, over to you. In the very fascinating world of new media, and inclusive of visual arts and a little bit of that traditional, how do you see AI augmenting those artists who want to spend time in that space?
Good question. I actually had an opportunity, based on this talk, I had an opportunity to really take a step back and sort of see various different types of creative processes that are involved in the media arts and the visual arts, because it's actually very much expanded, right, these days, increasingly so as the affordances of technology increases as well. So I'm sort of taking a very overview kind of approach. So there is the impetus that drives the creation, and then there's the actual creative process, which is extremely complicated and very diverse for different people, and then there's a creative output. So let's look at impetus, for instance. An impetus for an artwork could emerge from a particular societal problems an artist wants to address. Could be a critical experimentation with a specific technology. For artful stress testing, a lot of us like to mess with the technology to see what kind of boundary we can bounce into. It could be a desire to retell or reframe a sublime moment or an experience, to make a visible, previously invisible phenomenon relationalities through the use of technology. Or it could be based on a client brief as well, thinking about creative industries that's outside the art world, or a specific commission of an artwork as well, right? So there's an impetus that drives it. And then there's a big creative process that involves the whole heuristic journey of arriving at your final artwork, which is also very broadly framed for flexibility. So this part entails the exploration and experimentation with diverse concepts, technological platforms, data sets, your own reflections of your own processes, compositions, the order and method in which the things are done, cross-referencing with works presented by others in the field, both present and past, and ethical considerations, as well as synergizing from various collaborations, including the ones we do with machine learning algorithms, right? And this is a very idiosyncratic practice for each artist, and for each different artwork, you may have a different process as well. So it's a big, very big realm of possibilities, which is based on the toolkits amassed by each artist's individual skill sets, whether it be technical, historical, or theoretical knowledge, technical know-hows, available tools, and the processes, as well as the failures and iterations that sometimes bring accidental discoveries, coincidences, contingencies that also shape the final work as well. So this heuristic journey is the manifestation of an artistic propensity in a final artwork, the compelling desire to create, expand, and open new doors and dialogue with our materials, our own belief systems, inclinations, and even traumas, and both subconscious and conscious process. It all comes in together, and it's such an exciting process of actually discovering yourself in the process of discovering the subject matter at hand as well. So that's what I love about art, right? So then there's a creative output that reaches a level of satisfaction. These works will materialize in an exhibition or applied in whichever format the content was created for, such as being deployed as part of a marketing campaign even, or published as a book, etc. So how does AI get involved? So AI could, number one, shape our impetus by being the main subject of experimentation or critical reflection. It could simply be serving you interesting topics through your media environment to impart new creative directions as well, right? Because data that we see online is now completely personalized in many different ways. It can help you locate like-minded individuals who then bring new impetus to one's own art-making practices, or could also be a part of a creative brief to work with AIs, etc. Then when it comes to the core creative process that I talked about, AIs can be applied in countless ways, depending on the width and breadth of the individual artist's creative toolkit that I've mentioned earlier. So more seriously speaking, it can be used as a theoretical or philosophical subject matter that influences the way an artwork's content, processes, and mechanisms are shaped. One can investigate the limits and boundaries of what AI can or cannot do. One can fold machine learning algorithms into interactive mechanisms of an artistic work. Or it can be used more sporadically, right? You can use it at the starting point, similar to what Stan has mentioned, to help with the research on various styles of potential usages, to quickly generate sketches during ideation processes, to quickly create textures needed when building complex VR environments, for instance, because you have to create a lot of assets, right? And you really save your time. To swipe a creative style that inspires you while avoiding intellectual property issue, although this one's a bit dubious. And then to bring an unexpected inspiration in times of creative blockage. There's so many different ways, and also to collate a bunch of data and sort of make it more digestible for you to create an artwork with. And also AIs can be used to make the final output as well, which is a separate thing. Through the text to image functions, you can generate the entire image on its own, or by going back and forth from text to image and back to text and text to image, you can do whatever you desire, right, in many different ways. And by human artists recompositing and re-editing the outputs of machine learning outputs, that's also another way we could work with it, and integrating the AI output with other elements of the piece in like a larger, artwork. Let's say the symphony, as Johnny mentioned earlier as well. It is a small component of a larger work as well, right? So it really depends on how much control the artist wants to relinquish and how much of AI elements they want to bring in. So I think there's infinite amount of possibilities, and each individual's ability to tap onto this depends on their own individual skill sets.
Yeah, fantastic. Please continue.
Oh, well, so looking at my own work process as a medium agnostic new media artist who love trying out new technologies, AI in its current form is not really such a big threat yet, because many things that I do are still outside of the easily accessible capabilities of commercialized AI technologies. Although I can't really say that this will be the case in the near future, right? Because we've seen how much development has happened in the past few years alone, right? But I think generally artists with more skill set, like tool sets, are actually see this in a positive way, because there's many different combinations we can make on our own. We don't really need to rely on the artists. But of course, this is going to be a much bigger problem for the more traditional visual artists like illustrators, photographers, designers who deal directly in the currency of visual aesthetic generation.
Yeah, no doubt. And indeed, that may be a good transition point to pivot from how AI is augmenting, supporting, helping our art, the creation of our art, to something that might be a little scarier, possibly down the road. And so just to frame this up, apparently in late 2022, so just the other few months ago, a completely created, a completely imagined and created piece of art done by an AI algorithm using generative AI methodologies won an art contest. And that ticked off a lot of people, including many of the artists that were competing against it. So let's pivot now to think of what a world might look like when AI is doing all the work. Maybe occasionally the humans are augmenting the AI, not the other way around. But the point being that AI itself will get so much better, so much smarter as more and more training data comes back to it. So, for example, all three of you have referenced some iterative feedback into the AI itself, typically, but not always, through generational adversarial networks, GANs as they call them. You've got a training routine by which the second network, basically it's a critic essentially of the first network, can help to improve and strengthen and ultimately sustain a much more powerful AI response to the same prompt or question. So if we're living in that world 2 or 3 years from now, maybe it's 2 or 3 months from now, I hope not, but we may have just an incredibly robust AI-driven art creation capability. So I wonder, and it's an open question to all three of you, but Lisa, we can certainly start with you. I wonder, where does that put us, and where does that put all of our artists from a professional standpoint, who obviously need to make a living being able to sell their self-created or AI augmented art?
Okay, so the losing of our standing ground because a lot of these things that we are doing is being done by AI is a fear that existed through a very long, for a long period of time. But we are all united on this front. The whole world is united. All the artists around the world are kind of like scared about it. So yes, it is definitely a problem. But I sometimes think that the question whether who owns the art, who is the real author of the art, might actually be missing the point, because there are larger societal problems over and beyond the immediate loss or the dwindling of jobs, which forces us to reform our system. Actually, reforming our system is necessary, and these kind of opportunities help us rethink our system and make our current system more relevant to the technology that we're developing as well, right? But like things like there's a problem such as popular aesthetic could be over dominated and flatten the diversity of aesthetics in circulation, right? Although it could also foreclose the usage of certain distinctive AI generators in the art world because it gets overused, right? So there's a lot of different things, and the artists could sort of like react with so many different ways. And we are in the process of learning to dialogue and try to find a position for AIs to sit alongside us in the game of creation. But it also creates a huge challenge to education in particular. Some students will rely on AI to generate visuals and text for their assignments. I'm also a teacher as well, and a lot of my students are interested in AI. They're all trying to see what is the difference between AI and human artists, right? it's like everybody's looking into that. Maybe there's a problem there, right? Can we look at other things as well? So some students rely on the AI and tech to generate their assignments, but this limits the opportunity to learn and improve. The whole big creative process that was so integral in like negotiating with yourself and the technology, everything, that whole process can be like really shortened. And in that, you may lose a lot of different stuff. But AI text generation in particular, I think, is more dangerous, especially in the non-English speaking world, because the ability to fluently speak on your work in the global art world may be impacted with over-reliance on AI tools. Then that would be another, like cultural imperialism, where some sort of people with certain linguistic capital sort of do better, like can represent themselves better, right? So if this goes into the education system, that's an issue. Another scary issue is the uncritical transposition of older human problems, such as geopolitical cultural hegemony, issues of perpetuating harmful biases, the degradation of trust in human societies, particularly on the internet, because we don't know what's real and what's not real, what's human and what's not. And the political polarization that is exacerbated by fundamental attribution era, where we sort of define ourselves versus others in a very cut and mean kind of way, like that privileges us and sort of externalizes the others. Like that's a very human behavior that we have to still work on. And all of these things become amplified indiscriminately if they become technologically boosted through the uncritical transposition into these new ground shifting paradigms, such as AI or the Web3. So I believe rather than scapegoating the technology we're developing for its assumed potential to overrun humanity, we might want to start by putting more effort into resolving our own human issues, which is a very common sentiment nowadays, particularly because they're embedded silently into our cultural a priorities, our assumptions, the conventions that are already in the art world, right? And it's hidden. It's like it's baked into our cultural conventions, artifacts, and processes. And this is the ground upon which art and knowledge making takes place even today. So there are bigger issues to, as I think, like look into. I think these larger societal issues are much harder to resolve because creative impetus for artists to find alternative solutions to survival, we are united, as I've mentioned, and because it's a human desire to stay relevant, we may expand our toolkits to find new and perhaps more engaging spaces that are still safe from AI through personal expansion of learning new skills and trying to sort of grow your practice away from the encroachment, or to find success in the many new processes implemented to counter the issues of redundancy, like opting out from the training data, which a lot of artists are already doing, creation of alternative creative communities such as Mastodon, open source federated spaces, or even incorporate initiatives such as Adobe Firefly that made an ethical decision to use a stock image database, even if it impacted the quality of their AI. And they're trying to find ways to help the art creators sort of monetize from selling their content over, etc. So the solution is not here yet, but it'll be arduous. But then I believe in our creativity to find new configuration because we are globally united on this front. I think we should be more scared of AIs getting into the processes where we are divided. Those are the dangerous scenarios, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That is such a well-rounded summary of not only the challenge, but the opportunity. And I'm glad you linked it into a much, much bigger context, which is really humanity's struggle to improve in general. Any observations or concerns or just anything you've got regarding AI advancing so quickly that at some point it's generating art on a consistent basis, whether that's a new musical composition that outperforms anything a human can do. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, let me share my thought about that because I've been asked a lot about, is AI generative art going to replace human being, the threat and opportunities. And I like what Lisa was saying. That's a bigger issue about just fearing for this immediate threat. I would like to point back, in history, about the history of photography when it was first introduced it was considered as a banal form of art. It's a threat to artistic creation that is gonna take away job from the painters who was doing portrait. The highly skilled, highly artistic approach to capturing human image. Photography was just paled comparing, a simple, a capturing, and some people even thought, it will capture one's soul. And so there were a lot of concern, how photography will destroy fine art, how, this will create this great artistic compromise. As it turned out, that's quite the contrary. How we see how photography drive, like what Lisa was saying, create that impetus for artists to create new form of art, push forward, the development of romanticism in painting all the way to impressionism, expressionism, how they kind of influence each other, and still image become a way for people to have access to capturing their image. They remove the barrier of different class of people where they could actually have access to capturing image of their own, and retaining them, and then from still image eventually to moving images, and then the rest is history, isn't it? The movie we watch and everything. So like what Lisa was saying, rather than focusing on the negative, oh yeah, this is gonna be the end of the world for us. Think about the future. I think somebody mentioned, we tend to underestimate, technology in the long run, and that's very true. And we need to look at and I do want to say, I'm a big fan of Stan. I have your book, right here, and then, and I love what you were saying. With everything we want to create for the future, we must first learn to imagine it. And if we are feeling a little bit threatened by it, maybe we're just a little bit low on imagination. That's my little, thinking.
Oh, outstanding, Johnny. I'm so glad you baked in one of the many, many, many examples of a perceived threat from a new technology, in fact, only making the world a better place, even for those who painted for a living, for example, a group that must have been very nervous back in the early photography days. Stan, your book has been referenced again. 2041.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you for reading the book, and I hope you like it. And I think, right now, if you open Amazon, there are like 240 something books, publications, like co-authored with AI, like is put on there. But of course, most of them doesn't sell very well because maybe people just being lazy and they just generate something and put it in the book. So it's never gonna make anything better, right? So I think I agree with Lisa and what Johnny said, like it pushed back to human creators. We have to like upgrade ourselves. Like we have to co-evolve with the machine and make ourselves a better creator. So I think this is what's happening like before and at the present day and in the future. And right now I can see there's certain jobs might be displaced by AI, for example, copywriters, because I already heard a lot of buzz, like the bots that try to replace like copywriters, human employees with AI because it's cheaper, faster, and never gonna be a strike. So this is something might happen, but also make people to think how we can retrain people, how we can reallocate people whose job got displaced by machine or AI. And also, I think this is something we need to build up a new value system, because before, like everything we've been driving is by capitalism, is all about like maximize the profits. So a lot of human factors like dignity, like creativity, like belonging, love, and maybe self-actualization, like purpose of living is actually being neglected. So I think in the future, our next generation who was born and raised in the AI age, for example, they can have this kind of like super smart, intelligent companion, which is highly customized by their interaction. So people like in my story, Twin Sparrow, each kid have this kind of opportunity to be educated in their unique and customized, personalized way. So this is something we never experienced this kind of like a leap in human history. So everyone can like maximize their chance, like to fulfill themselves, to self-actualize their purpose. So I think this is something we might want to help people foresee and imagine, like this kind of future. So it's a more constructive, more optimistic way, but still we have to be very cautious, because right now I think governments, like the law enforcement regulation, is like far left behind, because they don't understand what is the technology and what is behind the technology. There are lack of imagination and everything. So I think right now we need a lot of like perspective from our industry creators, also from like people, anthropologists, psychologists, sociologists. We need all of this humanities perspective to help them to see a holistic picture of the future, and to make a responsible plan to help to build up this new AI government society. So this is what I can see is gonna be happening, and it's gonna be rough for many people, but still we have to hold on to some hope.
Oh, thank you, Stan. What wonderful insights. And I'm so impressed with all three of you for setting the question into a much bigger, more critical perspective. So thanks to all three of you for that. Let's reverse the situation a little bit. AI offers those who are far from the art world, non-artists, if you will, still can't sketch like me, certainly couldn't write a score of music like me. Is there a possible new benefit to, if you will, the less artistically inclined people of the world in working with AI to generate things that are beautiful, whether it's a short story to read to your child, whether it's a beautiful sketch of perhaps your mother, resting outside in a sunny chair, or something else. Would either of you have any comments or thoughts around how AI can help bring more people into art rather than the other way around?
For sure. Like for me, I'm a writer. I couldn't paint or draw, but with product or service like Midjourney, I can easily create some illustration for my story or my book, or as a cover art or something like that. So it like almost pushed me back to my art history class, because I need to pick up those names, schools, styles, and you can better train telling the machine what to do with the imagery you imagine in your brain, and like use the prompts to change text into imageries. Maybe in the future it will be films, videos, maybe animations, etc., etc. So I think everyone, even without like art background, without all the skill sets, but you could be a director, you could be a painter, you could be an artist on a certain level for sure, but you need your unique understanding of what you exactly ask for. So that basically, I think, is a new way of education. So this is what I can see.
Oh, I love the way you phrase it. It's a new form of education. Yeah. Lisa or Johnny, anything you'd like to add on this, or we'll move on?
I agree. I think by people, the surprising thing is that to the general public, very often art is seen as the garnishing, the pretty garnishing on top. So even with my students, all right, create interdisciplinary art. And then they create something. Oh, where's the art part? And then they say, oh, the pretty stuff, right? like it's going to be that the look of the work is going to be the art part. And I'm like, oh, wow. And I remember like 20 years ago during my bachelor's, I asked the same question to people in Canada, like the students and teachers around the school, and I interviewed all of them. And then the people, there was a general, like a diverse understanding of what art is, right? So I think now that we're all plugged into a shared space and we see more innovative artworks that are not only created for the art world, but are created to face the audience, because we really got to focus on the world that we live in, because our experience come from there. The feedback has to go back into there as an input to make our world a better place. Like to have these discussions in the academic world, in all these, in the middle of all these theories and philosophy, is to really, you know, like be irrelevant in a way. And as I mentioned, as we discussed, like the work by Johnny, the orchestration of the artwork, that was public facing. Of course, Stan's work is very much public facing and very, very accessible. And media art is still less accessible for some reason, but I think because we have social media and all these things, we're sort of like amplifying what we are, what we do, and what kind of benefits, you know, people could gain from it. I think there's an improvement. And then this dialogue will sort of tether us into a common mind space where we can like think about our future in a more connected way, hopefully. But we have to see, I mean, it all depends on how we as creative individuals appeal to the public, not as a boring field that is like too difficult to understand, but how we can unpack it for the multiple levels from academia all the way down to the general public, so that art can really live up to its potential. So I'm quite hopeful still.
Well, all three of you
I'm
are
also very critical too.
Sure.
Johnny, did you want to say something, please?
Yes, very quickly. No, I don't think we need any more artists. We need more people engaging in the arts. You know, let's put it that way. That's a fine line between, this kind of technology allow, there's a widening of access. That's very true. In the past, if you don't have a camera, you can't be a photographer. If you don't have a phone, you cannot be. Now everybody can call themselves a filmmaker or videographer. That's okay. But the thing is, we need to separate that. We need to respect artistic endeavor, but there are different layers. And we encourage people to engage, to participate, but we don't call everybody an artist. We don't have to do that. And so I think that's a distinction. I think that's a great deal of advantages, for people to be engaged in the arts in the form of writing, in painting, for children, clearly, for learning, for adult, for the elderly. And so I think this kind of widening of access, I learned that, some elderly friends and say, now that I'm retired, I want to learn a musical instrument, but it's too hard. So, with an AI assisted, musical keyboard, then I can actually start to create and get my finger, kind of into a keyboard. I think, that's just wonderful. How we engage the entire society, in participation. Yeah.
Well, no surprise that the three of you are baked into your comments. Just a fantastic global educational way of thinking about it. So kudos to all three of you. Thank you very much to our three panelists, Professor Johnny Poon, Dr. Lisa SoYoung Park, and of course, our wonderful Mr. Stan Qiufan Chen. We appreciate your time and energy from all three of you. A big thank you to our audience. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. Hopefully you've learned and grown from this and it's given you something to think about. So good morning, good afternoon, good night to wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at a future Asia Society AI event. Bye-bye.